Welcome to Generating Demand, real stories from the B2B trenches, where we tell you our secrets, like how to establish thought leadership, or rock your webinar registrations, and tips and tricks to drive sales-ready leads. Lean in, listen, and learn. We've got you covered. This podcast is brought to you by Virtual Intelligence Briefing.
Hi, and welcome to Generating Demand, Stories from the B2B Marketing Trenches. We're here this morning with Will Thompson from Insight Squared. Will is a longtime marketer who is going to share some stories with us on content syndication. Welcome, Will.
Awesome. Hey, Amanda. Thanks for having me.
It's nice that you can join us.
Yeah, excited to be here.
I am especially excited about your topic because content syndication in the world of B2B demand gen is a somewhat maybe polarizing topic of campaigns or channels or tactics that work, right? A lot of B2B marketers, myself included, have signed up for very expensive, high-level, top-tier content syndication programs where a piece of our content or the company's content is in a knowledge base, so to speak, and professionals searching that knowledge base may or may not download that piece. When they do look at that piece or download that piece, then that lead gets passed along back to the company as a lead. And I can speak to my own experience, which is those never, in my experience, were very hard to convert. We paid a lot of money to work with these high-end programs, these top-tier programs, and rarely saw ROI. So I know that I personally have canceled a few contracts in that. So I'm really excited to have you here to say and to teach us on sharing your story and teaching us about how to make content syndication programs work. Because as I understand it, you've had great success with content syndication.
Yeah, it's been a cornerstone a lot of my marketing programs for a while now, actually. And I'll give a quick background of myself and why I think this stuff is really great. And then obviously open it up to sharing some of my experiences and especially I think it'll be important to share some of the blunders that I've had when it comes to content syndication as well, because there's a lot you can do wrong. But when you get it right, the program's just really sing and makes everybody happy. Sales is happy. Our numbers look really good. And we're just making really good use out of our marketing budget and marketing dollars. So I've been in the B2B marketing space for a little over 8 years now-ish, I think. Oof, man, that sounds like a long time. It's not, but it sounds like it. So I started sort of in my advertising and demand gen and digital marketing path at Demandware. Actually, I had some previous marketing positions at other companies before then, but this was my kind of my entry point into like, okay, I work in the tech space now. Demandware, they don't exist anymore. They got acquired by Salesforce. But when I started there, they're an e-commerce platform and competed with the likes of like Shopify and BigCommerce and other ways to sell online. A majority, though, we were selling to very high-end retailers, Nike, Adidas, the likes, which was really cool stuff. So I was there running their digital marketing programs. So all their advertising, website optimization, SEO, as well as account-based marketing. That's sort of where I got my first experience with content syndication. The agency that we were working with actually advised us to check it out. And it's something that at that point I had not experienced before, but it seemed too good to be true almost, right? When we were looking at our traditional cost per lead through our regular advertising programs through search and display, which don't really generate conversions, but paid social. And then we had our content syndication programs where we're looking at, cost per leads of around like $42 to $36 a lead. I was just like, what is this? Like, how can I understand more about this? And why is this so cheap? At least relative to the other programs we were running, which is really cool. So and I'll get back to that in a second, but from Demandware, made my way to Salesforce through the acquisition. Spent about 5 years at Salesforce, and there I was on many different teams. Actually, I was on the Demandware, which transitioned to the Commerce Cloud team for about 3 of those 5 years. I'm still just doing more of that digital marketing, account-based marketing, and running those programs. From there, moved over to the account-based marketing team at Salesforce, and sort of helped to get that team or worked with that team to get everything up and running for account-based marketing. Again, we use content syndication as sort of one of the pillars within our ABM programs over there, because it was a very easy way for us to get targeted leads, which is somewhat difficult. And then my last year there at Salesforce, I was actually on the strategic enterprise demand generation team. So focused on our strategic accounts over at Salesforce and supporting our SVPs and AVPs of sales to figure out what specific marketing activities and demand gen activities we could use to support, their 300 or so accounts, which was really interesting. And now I'm over here at Insight Squared. So sort of took a leap to a smaller company, which I'm very happy with how things are going there right now. I sort of, at Salesforce, it was a super cool place to be, but after a while, you become a bit of a cog in the machine, and I was hoping to get back to a smaller company again and try to figure out, how can I get more ownership and more insight into what's actually happening and driving marketing performance. Because that's not always easy to see when you're at a gigantic company like Salesforce. It's hard. It's hard to measure, like, what is your individual impact? Yeah.
It's true. It's true. I have to say, that's a really strong start in the B2B space. I think I have that coffee mug.
I got very lucky. I will have to say. I had, at Demandware, my hiring manager, had a lot of faith, and, I was definitely hired for personality and not talent, maybe. I think. But it was great. It was an amazing learning experience, and I've had some great managers and great mentors along the way who have helped to accelerate my career and really educate me on how to do this stuff. And it helps that I was also excited and eager to learn and just test and fail and try again and optimize and just keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is one of the funnest parts of marketing, really, is that trial and error. I think of it a lot like a big Tetris game. Like, how do we fit all these pieces together to be successful? And it is part art, part science.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us a little bit about content syndication. So I know that, as I mentioned, I've struggled with it as a marketer. And I wanted to point out, Will, that, I have short stints at a lot of companies. I don't know that I've been with a company longer than 3 years.
Sure. Yeah.
Some of that was through natural acquisitions or, taking a company through an exit, which there's always sort of organic attribution after that.
Yep.
But I have to say that one of the things that all of those experiences has taught me is that sometimes solving new marketing problems is really fun, right? Like new product, new market problem, new company, new dynamics, and having solved or tried to help solve many marketing problems over the years has been really valuable to me in my experience today.
Yeah.
So, let's talk a little bit about the content syndication and solving and how that fit into your Tetris game.
Yeah.
Your experience.
Happy to. So it's, I would say in the early days of content syndication, like I said, I was running those programs through my agency at Demandware. I think the best learning from that I have just to start was, if you have an agency and they're willing to do the contracts with your syndication vendors for you, just do that, because you just have to pay one person. You don't have to deal with contracts for anybody else. Oh, it was fantastic. So, it was a little perk. but man, it was great because we were using upwards of 5 different content syndication vendors per quarter. And
I bet it made your life a lot easier.
yeah, it did.
There's a lot of companies and a lot of marketers out there that don't have agencies.
Yep.
So back up a little bit and tell us a little bit more about what type of agency you were working with, or I don't know if you can reveal names, but if you can share like what, how does that work?
Sure.
If you were on a company side,
Yeah.
how do you go and find an agency?
Yeah, definitely. So the agency was already there in place
Okay.
when I joined. They're a local shop just out of Boston, kind of small, but good people over there. So in terms of like if you're looking for an agency, it's hard. I went through this at Insight Squared, and I don't know if I have any great recommendations for how to go find an agency, because for me it's just worked out through personal relationships and recommendations from others, really. And I know that's a hard recommendation to say. It's like, well, just go ask people, ask your network, see who has great relationships with different vendors and different agencies, and try to get some personal recommendations to start, because that's really and what I've found just in the marketing space in general is it's all relationship based. Like, it's such a small B2B marketing tech world. It's crazy, and especially in the US, and I'm based in the Boston area, the Northeast and Boston especially. It's all very relationship based, and everybody knows everybody somehow, which has amazed me. But that's a great place to start. So we actually onboarded a new agency here at Insight Squared, and they're individuals I worked with at Salesforce and Demandware. So I worked with them actually for SEO, and they expanded as an agency, and have some really great in-house paid staff as well. So I was willing to work with them there for both of those, the SEO and currently paid for our relationship. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, is it like a digital marketing agency, or what type? What would you?
Yeah.
A creative agency? No,
it's a digital marketing agency. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it really, the ones who would be running your content syndication, and I find it is a bit unique. Not a lot of agencies will do this. We were kind of lucky with that previous agency, who used that as a pillar in their programs for a lot of their clients. Currently, like, if I'm doing content syndication programs, I have to work with the vendors. I'm comfortable doing that now, because I've been working with vendors for a long time now, and a lot of different vendors. So I'm comfortable negotiating those contracts. It's kind of fun. But
great.
It does help to have that. So if that's something you're interested in, and like if you're searching for an agency who can do that for you, like, definitely specifically ask if they are ones who would, be that intermediary for you between content syndication vendors and whatnot.
Yeah, that's really great. So the options are: go find a digital marketing agency that has content syndication in their pillars, or work directly with the vendors. And as you say,
Exactly.
that B2B marketing space is small and everyone knows everyone. I'm sure there's a handful of the top 5 vendors that run content syndication as part of their services, and everybody knows them. So let's start there. So let's start your story there. You have contracts signed and everything is in place. Now what?
Yeah,
what happens next?
Exactly. So with us, we were lucky at Demandware. We had a lot of content, right? Because the whole core pillar and the whole point of content syndication is you're taking the content from your company that you've written and created, and you are syndicating it out or having other vendors share it out with their networks and their audiences. With my programs, I did guaranteed lead programs, which were really fantastic. There are multiple different kinds of programs at different cost levels. I've always done guaranteed lead programs. So essentially, I'm saying, okay, here's X amount of dollars, which will get me a cost per lead of, let's spitball and say $40 per lead, and therefore X amount of leads. Those are guaranteed. And with those guarantees, I also append different levels of, what sort of accounts do I want? They have to be B2B, they have to be SaaS and tech companies. I only want to get, marketing functions and job titles, and I want all those marketing functions to be, or those individuals to be director plus individuals, right? So
Okay.
all of a sudden I'm starting, with a super affordable program, at least when you
Mm-hmm.
compare it to, your search programs. I'm appending
Mm-hmm.
all this targeting, which is really hard to do from your other digital programs. And I know these people are downloading my content. Sounds really great. Like, it's like, okay, great. Let's just do that over and over again, and let's get a bunch of
Yeah.
leads, and let's make a lot of money. There's a lot more to do in between there that I've found, and like I said, I'm willing to share some of my blunders here, and what has not gone well, because it
I think I
sounds
just want to
simple, but it's just not. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think I'd like to add, I think this is where I failed. This is where I
Yes.
stopped. Like, oh, this sounds great. I've got a great budget.
Yep.
I've got a great cost per lead. I've got targeted leads coming in.
Yep.
I'll just throw them in my database. The
Exactly.
end.
Done. Passing the sales. Sell them everything that they ever are going to buy, and let's keep doing it over and over again. Yeah, and like in an ideal world, that would be fantastic. But I've not seen it work that way. So okay, so cool. We've figured out our targeting. We have the content we want to syndicate through these vendors. They've built their landing pages for us. They've shared the creative. We've approved it all. Cool. We're launching it. They're either gonna, syndicate this content out on their networks of websites or their email newsletters, or some do display advertising. It really depends on the vendor. They all have so many different capabilities nowadays. Which is fantastic. I think there's a lot of competition now for really good vendors and really good audiences out there that you can work from. And it's going to be a lot of trial and error to figure out which vendors work for your company and your space, and who you can eventually sell into. So yeah, great. So we got all that. Cool. All of a sudden, you get an Excel spreadsheet of 1,500 leads in your inbox, and they go, cool, hey, your engagement's all set. We got all your leads in a day. It was awesome. Thanks very much. See you later. And all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're going, okay, well, that's not that bad. Pass it over to marketing ops. They go, oh my God, are you serious, man? You're giving me 1,500 leads and I have to upload these now? It's like, what? Yeah, yes, technically,
Yes,
so
please.
that's the first kind of rule, is like, give your ops team heads up, because they're not going to be happy if you just all of a sudden are like, hey man, here's a list that you have to upload into Salesforce or Marketo or Eloqua, and it's 1,500 leads, and I didn't give you any notice, and you didn't know this was coming. So that's a big one.
That's tip number one.
Yeah.
Let your ops team know.
Exactly.
In advance.
Yeah.
When possible.
Give them a heads up. They need to process everything, build out all the campaign structures. I was the one building out all the Salesforce campaigns in that role. So that step wasn't a big deal. I know a lot of companies, operations teams are the one who are building out all the connectors between Marketo or Eloqua and HubSpot and Salesforce and all that stuff. And that takes time. These individuals are busy. You want your marketing ops team to be your best friend as a digital marketer or demand gen individual. You don't want to make them your enemy. So that heads up is always going to be a good idea. It helps those leads get into your system faster and more smoothly, because one of the big issues with content, or not issues with content syndication, but one of the challenges is you need to get these leads in your system and either start nurturing them or following up with them almost immediately. You have 3 days from when that lead hits your inbox, in that lead list, to when they are stale. On average is what we were finding. If we did not follow up with those leads in 3 days, we might as well just throw them out. We wasted our money. That they didn't remember they downloaded our content. They're like, who are you, Insight? What? I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about.
That was our experience.
I
think that may have been what we did wrong as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we waited too long because the feedback from my BDR team, sometimes companies call them ISRs, but the sales team following up on these were, I don't remember your content. I don't know what you're talking about. I was never on that site. Which, frustrated the team and caused a little blowback. So tip number 2 from Will Thompson today is get the leads within 3 days of downloading the content and start your follow-up process.
Yes. Yeah.
Great tip.
Exactly. I mean, and if you are not doing that, I mean, you have to. Really, it's a mandate for whenever I'm running these programs. I will do a lot of enablement with obviously our operations teams, our sales teams, and I will make sure that, if we have out of the box nurtures, we are using those nurtures. If we want to be more specific within our email follow-up, we can craft our own email nurtures and use those for these content syndication leads. It all depends on the volume of leads you're getting from content syndication. If you're just doing some small programs here and there, I wouldn't say you have to recreate the wheel and build out a whole new nurture. But, at Demandware, we were spending, towards the end of those programs, upwards of $120,000 per quarter on content syndication.
Nice.
And that was just on average. We were lucky because we were part of the Salesforce machine at that point. They would ask us, "Hey,
resources.
Do you guys need more budget for anything?" And I was like, "Yes. I always." The answer is yes, and that was an easy avenue for us to add more leads to our system, get new names, get new accounts, and work with then our we had a bit of a larger marketing team at that point, so work with our email team to figure out what is the plan for these leads, how are they going to get passed along to sales and whatnot. So. I'd say, what tip are we on? Number 3?
Number three.
Have a plan in place for how you're actually going to follow up on these leads from a marketing perspective. And I'll touch on the sales perspective in a little bit because that's really going to be what's going to drive the most business from these. But make sure you're nurturing them and make sure you are not just dumping them into your database and just passing them to your BDR team.
Let me ask you, Will, if I may. In your story, in your situation, I assume that you had multiple pieces of content.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I was running about 5 pieces of content per quarter when I was doing content syndication campaigns. Yeah.
Okay. So 5 pieces of content. I assume that you also worked with all of your vendors to get a lead flow, either an integration set up with your Salesforce or marketing automation system, or a manual export every few days so that you could upload and start the nurture process. I have the feeling that many marketers listening today might be curious to know, did you use one nurture template or did you create specific nurtures for each of the 5 pieces of content?
Great question. It depends. We tried a few different things, actually. Well, we've tried like the content-based approach. We also did a persona-based approach, which actually worked even better at the end of the day. It was sort of a blend of both. So we would kind of acknowledge the content download that they had made, but the message and the follow-ups in terms of content and other email recommendations were really based off of their persona, right? So, for Demandware and Commerce Cloud specifically, we were obviously selling to heads of e-commerce, or at least that was our ideal profile. But we had a lot of other individuals we were going after as well. We had marketers that we could sell to. Those are 2 totally different messages, 2 totally different personas who are interested in 2 very widely different use cases, right? One is how do I market better? And then the head of e-commerce is how do I get more business? It's in some way a blend between sales and marketing. But how do they optimize their whole e-commerce process as well? So 2 very different messages there. So we found that when we were writing and nurturing based off of the personas and what their pain points were, they were a lot more effective in terms of actually, driving results for us and nurturing these individuals.
Excellent. So I
Yeah.
know you didn't intend that to be tip number 4, but I'm going to
Oh,
call that
there
out
it
as
is.
tip number 4,
Yep.
the follow-ups. Trial and error sounds like is a good thing to do,
Yep.
and that in your particular story, there was the most success found with persona-based messaging.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Exactly. I mean, it's not always the piece of content that is going to be relevant to the individual's pain points. It
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's an indicator, but
Mm-hmm.
we had we'd done a lot of work on our personas to actually figure out what their core pain points are and how
Mm-hmm.
we were able to solve for those. So because we had that really built out already, we were able to just use that and leverage all that information, and then the content that mapped to that, in terms of additional ebooks and resources, webinars when we were having them, event invites and whatnot, that were relevant to those multiple personas that we had. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
I just read a stat yesterday. I think it's in LinkedIn's 2021 State of Sales report.
Yeah.
About irrelevant content and how it's
oh boy,
like people super annoyed irrelevant content. So I read that stat and thought, as a marketer, that's really, really hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes and know what will be relevant to them on that particular day in that particular email. So
yeah.
I love the persona-based approach because it is much more likely to be relevant.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
awesome.
We knew what their pain points were already, even if they didn't. So we knew what would resonate with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped that we also had a lot of competitive information. Like if we were going after specific lists in our content syndication program, I ended up
Mm-hmm.
doing a lot of highly segmented programs actually, for account-based marketing and just regular demand gen as well. But we had specific lists of competitive customers or customers of certain competitors of ours, and we knew what the pain points and the challenges were with those competitive products, so we could then message that within our follow-up, and not call out, hey, I know you have XYZ as your e-commerce platform and here's why it stinks, but just the like, oh, are you struggling with not being able to deploy new product lines on your website quickly? Like, here's how we can do this stuff better.
Here's how we can help you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Nice.
So yeah, so very pointed follow-up, but it wasn't like a direct jab. That was a bit too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That direct jabs don't go well in the community, so to
Oh
speak.
no, not at all, not at all. It's more so, here's, like you said, here's how we can help.
Yeah.
Yep.
So great. So we're now through the process of setting up and sending out content and then bringing the content into your database and starting some nurture from a marketing perspective. What else? What is next in the story?
So next is our sales follow-up, and this is what really was difficult for me in the beginning.
Okay.
Is
Tell us more.
is figuring out this sales relationship. So what we started in the beginning is we're like, okay, cool, we have all these leads, great, and obviously it took me a lot of time to figure out, okay, here's how we should pass them effectively, how we should route them, which nurtures they should go into and whatnot. That took a lot of time. That was a long evolution to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say the last thing I figured out, which I wish was one of the first things I figured out, is what does our sales team do with these leads, right? It was, started off with like, okay, hey, BDRs, we just got like 1,500 leads. Oh, by the way, I know we just had our like annual event last week. Sorry about that. Please follow up on all of these in 3 days. So that was not great. That was not awesome. They didn't like me for a little while after a couple of those, which was not great. So I think the big learning there was like, be more aligned with your inbound sales team. It's super, super important, especially for these programs. Like, it's just important for marketing in general to be more aligned with sales and meet with them and understand what they're working on, what cadence they have. Are they doing specific programs? So you can figure out and you can work with your content syndication vendors to figure out specific lead delivery dates as well. So you can understand, instead of like, hey, everybody's at Dreamforce and I just got a batch of, 10,000 leads and nobody's going to work them in the next 5 days. Like, that in advance. When I was a more junior level marketer, I didn't understand the complexities there, because I also didn't have those relationships with my sales team, which was not good.
Yeah, I can imagine that in a company the size of Salesforce, they are getting lead drops, in. I tend to think those sales teams get sort of organic inbound leads that come at a natural pace.
Yep.
And then they have these spikes of, we had an event or we had a webinar, or we had a lead load, and then here's a huge, you personally have 300 leads to call in the next 3 days. That's 100 a day.
Yep.
Get after it on top of all your other work.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And we had multiple instances of, and it was lack of alignment, really, because we were in our own little digital marketing bubble and we were just executing and being like, you asked for leads, here's more leads. Thank you very much. Please follow up on them. That's awesome. And they're like, well, I can't, because they were in the middle of those spikes of projects and individuals that they were following up on. So there have been a few times that those have meshed up together along with our content syndication programs, and it's tough. I mean, you end up having BDR managers who are traditionally very nice, not super pleased with the leads you're passing over, which is, it's always that conundrum with marketing and sales. It's like, well, you asked me for more leads. Granted, I probably should have asked, what's next week look like? What's the month ahead look like? Like, what's this calendar? When are we anticipating specific things and programs happening, or event follow-ups from third-party events, so we can figure out how to tie these things together and map out these timelines in a better way. Because like I said, we can work with our content syndication vendors to figure out specific delivery dates, or say, hey, I want you to pace this evenly throughout the quarter, so we don't just have one large dump of, like I said at the beginning, like 1,500 leads. And they're like, oh, we got everything. Your quarter-long program, like, we finished it in a day. Thanks very much. But it's like, normally it would be like, oh, sweet, that's 1,500 leads, but you're just looking at that surface level and not understanding the impact that it has, down the funnel on your sales team. And even in terms of being able to enable them with effective follow-up, because you have to think about it. If you have a, BDR team of 5 people and you pass them over 1,500 leads, that's a lot. All they're going to do, they're going to throw those individuals in email sequences. They're not going to call. They're not going to follow up with them. They're just going to automate some emails and go, okay, well, fingers crossed, maybe something happens. And 99 times out of 100, nothing's going to happen, because they're not able to put into the work to really engage with those individuals and reach out to them.
So you bring up a really good point, because that, when I think back of my experience with content syndication, we did exactly that. We brought them into the database. We threw them into, Outreach or Sales Loft, and created sequences to follow up and tried to drive those to a phone call. And there were few phone calls, if any, that came out of that, which may have contributed to, our lack of success. So as your final tip here, what is the tip? Is the tip to align with sales? Tell me your tip.
I think it's multifaceted here, right? So yes, overall sales alignment is the goal, and this, really, like, specifically, it's with your BDR teams or SDR teams, or Amanda, what did you call them? ISRs. I don't think
ISRs. Yeah.
I don't think I've worked at a place that had ISRs, so that's a new one for me. But it's creating that alignment there. It's educating your sales team on why these leads are different than your traditional inbound lead, because they are different. And I think the key points to make here is these individuals have not visited your website. They did not necessarily understand that they were downloading, your branded content. They knew that, hey, I get this weekly newsletter. It's, all this different content, and cool. I clicked it, opened the ebook and downloaded the thing, and great. I read through it and it was awesome. And then, 3 days later, they get a generic sales email. It says, oh, hi, my name is, Will over at XYZ company. Do you want to learn more about our cool product? And I'm like, I've never heard of you. What are you talking about? So it takes a bit of thoughtfulness in terms of your follow-up, and it takes a lot of collaboration with sales to figure out how they follow up. So like I said, educate them on the differences between these content syndication campaigns and like your paid search and social campaigns, because they are very different. Hype them up in terms of why these programs can be really good, because sometimes it's a little defeating for these BDR or SDR teams to see a gigantic list upload and go, oh gosh, if this is just our average lead list upload, these are going to stink. And they're not motivated and they're not going to work them effectively. So tell them why these leads are better, because they are. You can tell them, listen, we picked these specific accounts because of, the fact that, they're customers of our largest competitor and we know we can beat them, or, our propensity to buy or intent modeling or whatever we have, pick these accounts. They're director plus or VP plus individuals from our specific buying centers. And we know they're probably in market. So once you share that information with them, it makes them really excited to go, okay, like I'm going to work hard. I'm going to figure out how I can get in touch with these people. And then the next one is in terms of like what the sales follow-up should be. Like I said, generic outreach sequences like aren't awesome. Yes, you want there to be some sort of sequence or email cadence there for follow-up, but there are a few specific things that are helpful to call out and test these things at your company, because it's never going to work the same for each company. I've found that depending on the vendor, it helps to call out where they downloaded the content from, what content piece they delivered. And then instead of going like super heavy handed with, oh, do you want to meet and have a demo? Like try to build that relationship, share additional content that is going to engage them. Case studies can be helpful sometimes at this point, sometimes a bit too early, but like I said, it depends. Test all these things, work with your BDR managers to figure out like what's going to work and how can they influence new things. And then the other thing is, don't be afraid to have your BDR teams call these people, which I know some people are going to be like, that's a little aggressive. Like, yeah, maybe, but it works, right? It's a lot of work and it's hard to call people, but at Salesforce, the one thing that people don't really understand about Salesforce is, yeah, they have a world-class marketing team, but man, oh man, their sales team is second to none. You can't beat their sales team. They know what they're doing. They're the most finely tuned machine I have ever seen in terms of what they're doing there. They call everybody, every single person, which I know nowadays is a bit of a like, oh God, you shouldn't be doing that.
For that.
Yeah. Granted, like their SDR team is as big as a country, but they follow up with everybody, at least everybody that looks qualified. So they're having their SDRs calling down and qualifying and using multiple different tactics and channels to reach out to these people. If you have specific, like C-suite individuals that you're getting from these campaigns, feel free to reach out to them via email. LinkedIn emails could be great. Like I said, your phone calls are going to be fantastic here, and use all these touch points along with your marketing activities and your email nurtures to really engage with them. Because what you're trying to do is you're getting these individuals in the door. They're not super sure, or they don't really remember that they downloaded your content. They'll most likely remember the piece of content they downloaded.
But they may not connect the dots that it's
Yeah,
yours and belongs to your brand and your company.
exactly, because they
Mhm.
didn't visit your website. They downloaded your content through a different avenue, which is great because
Yeah.
you're able to engage with a whole different audience that you don't have coming to you already. But you need to do a bit of work to educate them on your value proposition and everything, and it takes a bit more frequent touch points than a normal inbound lead.
Yeah, something you said really, the light bulb went off in my head of, you with these programs as marketing, you are serving up the opportunity to have a conversation with your targeted profile
Yep.
and perhaps going into it at a topic level and not a brand level,
Yeah.
right? I see that, you came through one of our programs. It looks like you downloaded one of our content pieces. It was on this topic. Let's talk about that topic. Why are you interested in that topic?
Yeah.
And see if you can start the conversation there. So that is also very, very helpful to other marketers, I think, setting up programs like this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
well,
Exactly.
we're almost at time.
Oh
One of the
man.
things that I like to do in this podcast is to share resources. I know that none of us can, there's no free ride in marketing, right? We're all
Yep.
pulling from other resources and experts and knowledge sharing. And in your experience, do you have a recommended resource or two on content syndication programs or anything else that you found valuable
Sure.
in developing your career?
Yeah, definitely. I think in the one that I shared that I think is going to be kind of at a left field. It's not really a marketing resource; it's a sales resource.
Okay. Okay.
So outreach, obviously, the company, they do a really great job at educating BDRs and SDRs on how to create effective outreach sequences and have really great phone calls and really great emails. That's one that I would really recommend to understand a little bit
Nice.
about their world and figure out how you can help them in terms of creating these effective follow-up sequences for them to utilize in their outreach. Because at the end of the day, you're really reliant on your sales team to push these individuals forward. You're going to get more success there in terms of like seeing direct meeting attribution. Your sales team is going to drive a lot of that. Yes, you could get some from nurturing these individuals from a marketing level and get a demo request or a free trial request or whatever your ultimate CTA is. But really, your sales teams are going to push these forward the most effectively. So if you can figure out how to enable them and how you can kind of like meet them halfway if they're sort of stuck and not sure, I don't really know what to say in these sequences, help them write them. Us as marketers, we're really good at writing and crafting emails. And I think, it's a big skill and an important skill to have as a marketer to also figure out, well, how do you write sales emails? How can you help them blend that message? Because it's hard. It's two very different approaches.
That is an excellent resource, I have to say. And just to call out to the audience, you are in no way, shape, or form associated or affiliated with Outreach,
Oh no,
correct?
Outreach is technically a bit of a competitor of mine. So so no,
But
not. But they have some really helpful resources for individuals at that level. Yeah.
and I really appreciate that because one of the tasks on my plate today is to write an outbound series, follow-up
Yep.
series. So I will be visiting the Outreach resources today
Yeah,
to learn
it
some
helps a lot.
tips and tricks. So thank you for that, Will. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing the content syndication story. I know here at VIB, we have a content syndication program as well. I know that we deliver leads on Fridays, and that many things that you said, we do a cost per lead,
Yep.
and we do the targeting as well. So,
Yeah.
but your insight, sharing all the rest of the program of like how do you follow up and the persona based follow-up series and working with the sales team that follows up on these leads, it's all really, really, really helpful. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah. Happy to talk through it. It's a lot more work than you would expect from the surface level of going, oh, we're just buying some leads. This is great. It's, as you can see, I
Yeah.
just talked for about 40 minutes. It's much more than that. So Happy to talk. It was a lot of
Well,
fun.
you you shared how to make efficient use of your budget, right? Which as
Yeah.
a marketer, we're always looking for efficient use of budget, and you're able to find a cost-effective program and follow it up to have some great success. So really
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. Appreciate you having me. All right. Bye-bye.
If you have any questions, want to suggest topics, or have ideas for guest speakers, drop us a line at podcast@virtualintelligencebriefing.com. To learn more of our demand generation secrets, visit vibriefing.news or grab the link in our show notes.